Anyway, this year we were going to go varsity. We knew we were up against the best in the A House. Bill Keenan, a member of the LaSalle College varsity 8-man rowing team, and Dick Beshan, a second-team varsity football player for Notre Dame. These two were always among the favorites to win. They snidely called George and I the death crew, and insisted we were so out of our league and so out of shape we would certainly die during the race. Bill and Dick were very strong and very big, and very much in shape. George and I were slim, wily, creative, and really liked to drink. The only thing we had in common was that we all actually lived on the same floor at the A House. Their regular dogmatic routine was very exacting and masochistic. They awoke every morning at 6 a.m. by their own alarm. Yikes, George and I were just coming home by then. They went off to the beach and did starts and finishes in the boiling surf, and at the end of the day they humped the long rowing drills for time and distance. They came home exhausted around 5:30 and went to their room, fell into bed, took naps until Mom would awaken them, and then they would go down and their own alarm clock would go off at 6 o'clock, and Mom would awaken them, make sure they got up and go down for a protein and carbohydrate-laced dinner about 7 p.m. after all of us had left the dining hall. So, it was easy to scam them. They took themselves so very serious, and they broke our balls every chance they got. We knew we had to pay them back. So the scam started. It generated in our minds while we were shooting darts for beers about 3 a.m. one night in O'Brien's Cafe, a late-night bar in Somers Point. George and I went through the entire A House for an entire week before the race, secretly recruiting others, and solicited the entire A House population to join in our mighty scam against these big varsity rowers. The idea that germinated over the few nightly dart sessions at O'Brien's behind the scam was, at the beginning of each late summer night, right after sunset, and just after things start settling down, around 8 p.m. or 8 a.m., they look almost exactly the same because the mist was always coming in and out. Misty weather and atmosphere looked the same night or day. We convinced all the warriors in the A House population to pretend one night before the race that they had just come back from an all-night at work, as if they were the cops and the bartenders getting off work and coming in. The A House lifeguards like us began shaving and getting ready for work as if it was the day for the big race. What we did, the varsity nappers, came home at 5:30, went to bed, and we set their alarm to go off at 6, exactly a half hour later. The varsity nappers were working, as usual, by their own alarm clock, so they didn't notice anything, but boy, were they groggy. Mom and the waitresses had agreed to serve their regular daily breakfast as a regular special protein meal. Everyone in the dining room behaved as if they were just coming off of work, or they were just coming home from partying, or they were getting ready for work, and as they would on any regular morning. Therefore, the varsity nappers thought they had accidentally slept through the entire night. They were really groggy and really confused looking. Mom and the waitresses in the dining room made all the usual morning breakfast fares, and we all ate quickly, urging each other constantly to hurry. And we kept moving the varsity rowers. We paid absolutely no attention to them when they started talking to us. And when they would get confused about timing, we would say, "It's payday, come on, we gotta get in the car." And we all refused to talk to them civilly. They were two of the most confused looking varsity guys I ever saw in my life. And keeping a straight face was the most difficult part, as we all left together in groups of cars, going in a caravan to the lifeguard headquarters on the boardwalk at 10th Street to get our pay for the month. It was damn near impossible not to laugh. Everyone in our car acted grumpy and sarcastic with each other, but no questions were asked. When suddenly, the varsity rowers realized they were seeing people all dressed up in evening clothes, going to the boardwalk with all of us howling with mirth and exploding with laughter. They laughed, but it worked. We knocked them off their game. The next night, in the boiling surf, The varsity rowers only took second. The death crew, that would be us, came in third. The story about the changing of the night into day had been told over and over at Ocean City, New Jersey for many years. Bill and I became very close personal friends and still is to this day, or I should say night. My last year serving on the guards at Ocean City Beach Patrol was 1961, the summer before I married my lovely college May Queen. And as a note, there were many special, very funny stories about our time on the Beach Patrol. However, one that particularly stands out in my mind was actually recorded on film by John Bunning, the president of the First Pennsylvania Bank in Philadelphia. I had become friendly with him over the years and saw the film. I saw it in his house. It was hilarious. It includes my first real buddy in civilian life, a guy named William H. Pugh IV. He is now a practicing lawyer in Norristown, Pennsylvania, and I see him occasionally. We're still friends. I ran into him last year on the boardwalk. And here's the way that story went. In rookie school, everybody, the instructions are, when in trouble, never leave the lifeboat. Never. Early on as a rookie, after my recovery from the freezing cold rookie ocean swimming race, I left the A house. I met up with a dozen or so salty old lifeguards who spent most of our off-duty hours partying over at Summers Point. Ocean City is a dry jurisdiction. There's no booze sold there. So anyone who wants to drink has to drive or hitchhike across the Bay Bridge every single night. These particular old salt college guys lived at the smelly, desperately cruddy, dilapidated old house we all affectionately called the Armpit. I was one of the clients. This is all before we got to the A house. I was invited to live there with him until I found another place for the summer, and Billy Pugh was my roommate. Billy also had the exact same deal I had. We were assigned the same room, and we slept in the same double bed. And as coincidence would have it, we also became stand partners at the 32nd Street Beach, meaning we worked together and lived together. We bullshitted together about world affairs and the state of the universe every single day. I liked and respected Billy. He was very intelligent, had a good sense of humor, and he seemed to like me. He graduated from Villanova and was getting ready to enter law school there. He was actually Carl Schnee's roommate. Carl was, and still is, a very well-known lawyer here in Delaware. I had always had a weak spot for really smart people. All day long we talked about philosophy, politics, economics, anything and everything under the sun. I also gave him full credit for inspiring me to go to college. We both eventually left the Armpit, but stayed together as guard partners for the rest of the summer. One crowded Sunday afternoon, a lazy day late in summer, Billy and I decided to lay off in the surf boat. It's much easier to contain the crowd from the boat instead of blowing the whistle all day to keep the bathers together in a pack. Keeping them herded into one crowd from the lifeboat was the whole point of laying off. At all the lifeguard rookie schools, after the swimming race for the employment job, we were instructed never leave the boat. Never leave the boat. Throw in the buoys, throw in the oars, do anything you have to, throw in a rope, but never leave the boat. So we were laying off, and it was also show-off time. One guy rowed from the back of the bow of the boat facing the ocean, and the other guard stood on the edge, holding onto a rope, making muscles and showing off for anybody that was looking. The bowman was always checking over his shoulder for the large waves coming, which were constantly coming in from behind, while the other guy stood balanced on the stern sheet. Watching the crowd, holding the rope lifeline in one hand, attached to a ring buoy that could easily be thrown to a troubled bather. Of course, flexing my arms and posturing and posing for the crowd was a young warrior thing, and we all enjoyed it. One really hot, boring day with a large surf and big waves rolling in, but otherwise boring, I was standing posing on the stern sheet with Billy rowing. I looked over to my right and I saw two bathing hats drifting steadily out to sea. I looked twice because sometimes a really good swimmer or two would challenge us lifeguards and made us react either by blowing the whistle at them or rowing over and bullying them back to shore with the boat. I blew the whistle. They did not react to the whistle, and suddenly I knew by instinct, by their movement and their direction, that they were caught in a wash. A wash is a massive invisible current going underwater from the beach out to sea. They call it an undertow. It was obvious to me they were in deep trouble. I made no comment or warning to Billy. I just dove flat from the boat and swam toward them. When I got to them, they were both underwater and panicked. They were swinging and punching at me. I grabbed them both by the front of their bathing suits, and I pulled them underwater stiff-armed with one hand grip, and then I would go up for air. Then I would let them go up for air, and I would go down, and I just kept doing that, hoping, for God's sake, as I alternately lifted them up above to breathe, and I went down under, that Billy was rowing the boat toward me. I had some strange confidence that he was doing it. I could breathe, and I repeated the same act over and over as they continually panicked and thrashed at me. I was sure Billy would get there in time to keep us from being pulled out to sea. I couldn't see him, but the film I was watching clearly showed he was rowing fiercely in my direction. He had had trouble seeing exactly where he was because he had to look over his shoulder while rowing sideways along the heavy surf. Anyway, the surf could have turned him over and swamped the boat. John Bunning had his camera filming his own kids in the surf when the incident started, and at that exact time, I first blew the whistle at the bathing hats. John put his camera up on me and watched the entire event on film.